Governor Pawlenty, you say your economic plan with tax cuts and spending caps would grow the economy by an average rate of 5% a year for 10 years, a rate that has never been achieved in 10 years in a row. With the last 2 quarters averaging less than 1% growth, and even some Republican budget analysts very skeptical, openly skeptical of that plan, is your proposal just pie in the sky?
Well, the United States of America needs a growth target, and it needs to be an aggressive and bold growth target. I don't want the United States growth target to be anemic or laggard like Barack Obama's. So is the bar high? Yeah. But do we need that growth to get out of this hole? You bet. And I hope people will go to our website and read that whole plan, because it's the most specific, comprehensive plan of any candidate in this race. But, Brett, there's another question here. Where's Barack Obama on these issues? You can't find his plans on some of the most pressing financial issues of our country. For example, where's Barack Obama's plan on Social Security reform, Medicare reform, Medicaid reform? In fact, I'll offer a prize tonight to anybody in this auditorium or anyone watching on television. If you can find Barack Obama's specific plan on any of those items, I will come to your house and cook you dinner. Or...
What do you think of that?
Or if you prefer, I'll come to your house and mow your lawn. But in case Mitt wins, I'm limited to 1 acre. 1 acre.
Oh.
Governor Pawlenty and Congresswoman Bachmann, as you both know, there's an expression, Minnesota nice, and some people believe that both of you have tested it in recent weeks. Governor Pawlenty, you say that Representative Bachmann has no accomplishments in Congress. You have questioned her ability to serve as president because of her history of migraines. Question, Governor, is she unqualified, or is she just beating you in the polls?
Well, Chris, to correct you, I have not questioned Congresswoman Bachmann's migraine headaches. I don't think that's an issue. The only headache I hear about on the campaign trail is the headache Barack Obama has given the people of this country with his lousy leadership and this lousy economy. Now, as to Congresswoman Bachmann's record, look, she's done wonderful things in her life, absolutely wonderful things, but it's an undisputable fact that in Congress, her record of accomplishment and results is non-existent. That's not going to be good enough for our candidate for President of the United States. That's not going to be good enough for the President of the United States to serve in that capacity. The American people are going to expect more and demand more. And in fact, we need somebody who can contrast with Barack Obama on results. If you go to my record in Minnesota, you'll see government spending went from historic highs to historic lows. We appointed conservative justices, transformed the court in a conservative direction. We did health care reform the right way. No mandates individually, no government takeovers, and more. That's the kind of record we're going to need to contrast and beat Barack Obama.
Governor, you say you balanced every budget without tax increases as governor of Minnesota. But in 2005, you levied a new tax on cigarettes, which you called a health impact fee. You said you had to compromise with the Democratic legislature to end a government shutdown. But doesn't that show that when leaders are faced with big deficits, they sometimes have to raise taxes?
No. As I said before, I've got the best record of financial management, or one of them, of any governor in the country. The Cato Institute gave only 4 governors in America their highest grade, an A grade. I was one of those governors. The other 3 aren't running. The other 3 aren't even thinking about running. As to the circumstance that you mentioned, I had the first government shutdown in 150 years. We did put together a package, but I balanced the budget every time in Minnesota that I was governor. In fact, my last budget ended June 30th of this year with a surplus. I did agree to the cigarette fee. I regretted that. As it turns out, the courts later held it to be a fee, but nonetheless, it was an increase in revenues. Turns out we had a new budget forecast a few months later, and we didn't even need it. But my record of leadership in Minnesota, cutting spending from historic highs to historic lows, balancing the budget every time, doing health care reform the right way, again, stands in contrast to Barack Obama. He should cancel his Cape Cod vacation, call the Congress back into session, and get to work on this. Barack Obama is missing in action. He should have the kind of leadership I had when I was governor of the state.
I'm going to go to Representative Bachmann. This is a question also about that cigarette tax increase. You were in the Minnesota State Legislature at the time, and you said you opposed the tax, but in the end, you voted for it. Now you promise never to raise taxes. Why would you compromise then, but not now?
That's right. I was very vocal against that tax, and I fought against that tax. The problem is, when the deal was put together, Governor Pawlenty cut a deal with the special interest groups, and he put in the same bill a vote to increase the cigarette tax, as well as a vote that would take away protections from the unborn. And I made a decision. I believe in the sanctity of human life, and I believe you can get money wrong, but you can't get life wrong. And that's why I came down on that decision that I made.
Governor Pawlenty, do you have a response, 30 seconds to that?
Yeah, what's wrong in the answer is the answer. Congresswoman Bachmann didn't vote for that bill because of stripping away a pro-life protection. She voted for it and is now creating that as the excuse. But nonetheless, she speaks of leading these efforts in Washington and Minnesota. Leading and failing is not the objective. Leading and getting results is the objective. I've got the best record of results of any candidate in this race.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to Senator Santorum next.
Okay, yes, you can.
This is exactly what I'm trying to illustrate. We need to have a President of the United States who stands firm on their convictions. This is what I have demonstrated for every day that I have been in Congress. I have a consistent record of standing on my convictions. I didn't cut deals with special interests where you put the pro-life issue together with tax increase issues. That's a fundamental. It's a non-negotiable. And when we come to a non-negotiable, we must stand, and I stand.
Governor, we're going to come back around.
Just very quickly, her answer is illogical. If there were two bad things in the bill, a tax increase and we were hypothetically stripping away pro-life protections, which we weren't, then it's a double reason to vote against it. She voted for it.
30 seconds to respond.
I'm really surprised that Congresswoman Bachmann would say those things. That's not the kinds of things she said when I was governor of the state of Minnesota. And moreover, she's got a record of misstating and making false statements, and that's another example of that list. She says that she's fighting for these things. She fought for less government spending. We got a lot more. She led the effort against Obamacare. We got Obamacare. She led the effort against TARP. We got TARP. She said she's got a titanium spine. It's not her spine we're worried about. It's her record of results. If that's your view of effective leadership with results, please stop, because you're killing us.
You've said that the President's plan and the Romney plan are so similar that you call them both Obamacare. And you also said this: I don't think you can prosecute the political case against President Obama if you are a co-conspirator. Could you please tell Governor Romney, who's two down from you, what he and President Obama have conspired to do?
Yeah, I don't want to miss that chance again, Chris. Look, Obamacare was patterned after the Mitt's plan in Massachusetts. And for Mitt or anyone else to say that there aren't substantial similarities or they're not essentially the same plan, it just isn't credible. So that's why I called it Obamacare, and I think that's a fair label, and I'm happy to call it that again tonight. But that's not the only similarity between Governor Romney's record and President Obama's record. Again, if we're going to take him on, we have to contrast with him on other important issues. For example, in spending. I've got the best spending record. It took Minnesota's historic spending from highs to lows. Mitt ran up spending in his watch as governor 40+% over his 4 years. That's not going to contrast very well with the president. In the area of judicial selections, the Boston Globe said that 2 out of 3 or so of Mitt's judicial selections, judge selections, were either pro-choice, Democrat, or liberal. I appointed conservative, strict constructionists to my Supreme Court, so that we're going to have to take it to Barack Obama, and we're going to have to show contrast, not similarities.
Yep, Governor.
Another 5 U.S. soldiers were killed today in Afghanistan after the single biggest loss, that helicopter crash over the weekend, last weekend, almost 10 years after 9/11. After the killing of Osama bin Laden, with casualties mounting there, costs adding up, many people calling the government there corrupt. Is it still worth it?
Well, first of all, Brett, let's just stop and pause and reflect upon the loss of life, the 5 brave members of the military that you mentioned, as well as the 30 that were lost about a week ago, and all the others who've been lost or wounded in that conflict. We owe them not just our words of thanks and appreciations, but to their families, our thoughts and prayers. We wouldn't have the country we have without those brave men and women. We owe them our all, not just with our words, but with our deeds. as to Afghanistan, we were justified in the invasion. It was 10 years ago. People killed Americans. We needed to go there and find them, bring them to justice, or kill them. But in terms of where we are now, 10 years removed, I was there last summer with Governor Perry, by the way, and met with General Petraeus. He thought it would take about 2 years from last summer to have an orderly and successful wind down of our mission in Afghanistan, at least in terms of significant troop withdrawal. President Obama has accelerated that faster than either General Mullen or General Petraeus recommended. I would have accepted their recommendations and drawn them down a little slower.
So it's still worth it?
It is still worth it, but we're going to have a successful drawdown, not one according to Barack Obama's campaign calendar next year.
Governor Pawlenty, you say we have to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. You also recently said that Syrian President Assad must go. Would you rely on the same idea of international sanctions that President Obama has been using, or would you be more forward-leaning in possibly using military action?
Well, first of all, Chris, we need to use an increasing number of tools and measures. As to Iran, I believe we should undertake every plausible step to deny their intentions and their plans to get a nuclear weapon. That will include sanctions. That will include some of the good work that you saw with some of the scientists on their way to work in Iran. That will see some of the good work that you saw with the computer virus. But in the end, we should take every plausible step to deny that intention. As to Syria, Bashar al-Assad is mowing down and killing his people, up to 2,000 right now, and the President of the United States, Barack Obama, will not say he should go. Until recently, he and Hillary Clinton suggested that Bashar Assad was a reformer. He's not a reformer, he's a killer. This is another example of naive foreign policy by this president, and worse yet, he sticks his thumb in the eye of our best friends around the world that we should stand with. For example, Israel. He repeatedly sticks his thumb in Israel's eye. We should stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. There should be no daylight between us and the nation of Israel. They're one of our best friends in the world.
Governor Pawlenty, you often cite an article in National Review saying you may be the strongest pro-life candidate in the race. What's your opinion on what Senator Santorum said about exceptions, and isn't he more pro-life than you are?
Well, National Review, I think, is a respected publication from a conservative and Republican perspective, and they did an online article that said, based on results, not rhetoric, but based on results, that I'm perhaps the most pro-life candidate in this race. And the reasons for that are these. Number one, when I was in Minnesota as governor, I proposed and signed into law the Women's Right to Know bill. I proposed and signed into law the Positive Alternatives to Abortion bill. I proposed and signed into law the Fetal Pain bill and more. And our abortion rate in Minnesota has dropped dramatically, in fact, now at historic lows. In terms of my personal views, the only exception I can really reconcile or justify is the life of the mother. And I would sign that bill if it came in that form to me as president or as governor. But if another bill came with other exceptions that substantially advanced the pro-life cause, I'd sign that bill too, because I want to make progress to limit and ultimately end abortions in this country, and I want to move the pro-life cause forward, and I have. And that's why that publication said that perhaps I'm the most pro-life person on the stage based on results, not just rhetoric.
One brief follow-up. Do you support criminal charges for doctors who perform abortions?
I think there should be absolutely consequences for doctors who perform abortions if it's illegal and when it's illegal, and possibility of criminal sanctions or severe civil sanctions. I don't think the woman involved should be criminally sanctioned.
Governor Pawlenty.
Well, God has greatly blessed America, but with great blessing comes responsibility. And if we don't fiercely protect our most precious blessing, freedom, we may lose it forever. Now is the time for effective, tested, conservative leadership. I am that leader for America, and I will make sure when I'm president that America's brightest, strongest, and best days are ahead. Good night, thank you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.